My tiny alien neighbor entered mating season. What happened next took me by surprise. The first time I saw her, I thought she was just a peculiar kid with unusual fashion sense. Standing barely 4 feet tall, with luminous skin that shimmered faintly under the streetlight, my new neighbor tilted her head and gave me a smile that seemed far too knowing for her size. "Hello," she said, her voice like a silvery bell. "I am Liri. I will be staying in Unit 4. I waved awkwardly, clutching the grocery bag in my hand. "Nice to meet you. I'm Evan from Unit 3. From that day forward, I learned there was nothing ordinary about Liri. Chapter 1. The Neighbor Next Door. It didn't take long to notice the quirks. Liri never left her apartment during daylight, preferring to walk in the evening shadows. She ate strange, glowing fruit she grew in clay jars by her window. Sometimes at night I would hear faint humming, notes so low they vibrated through the walls. Still she was kind, often leaving small gifts outside my door. A crystal that glowed like a lantern, bread made of spongy green flour, or once, a carved pendant that pulsed faintly with warmth. One evening, after returning from work, I found her sitting on the steps between our doors. She looked pale, almost feverish, her silver eyes unfocused. "Are you okay?" I asked. She looked up at me, her pupils wide, her cheeks glowing faintly. "It has started," she whispered. "The season has arrived." I frowned, crouching down beside her. "Season? Like allergies?" Liri gave a trembling laugh. "Not allergies. Mating season. For my kind it is unavoidable." My throat went dry. She spoke with complete seriousness, as though she had just told me the weather forecast. Chapter 2. Strange Changes. Over the next week, Liri's behavior shifted. She became restless, pacing the halls at odd hours. Her humming grew louder, carrying a strange resonance that seemed to draw me toward her door without my permission. One night, unable to sleep, I opened my window for fresh air. That's when I saw her standing in the courtyard below, her skin glowing more brightly than I had ever seen. She looked up, meeting my eyes, and I felt something inside me tighten. "Evan," she whispered, though her voice carried as if she were right beside me. "It is difficult being alone." I nearly closed the window then and there, but something in her gaze stopped me. It wasn't lust. Not exactly. It was a raw, aching need to connect, to not endure whatever this season was in solitude. Chapter 3. The Invitation. The following evening she knocked on my door. I opened it to find her standing there, clutching the glowing pendant she had once given me. "I should explain," she said softly. I stepped aside and she entered, her presence filling the small apartment like starlight. She told me of her species, the Solari, who lived among humans in secret. Every few cycles, they entered a biological phase where their bodies demanded companionship, not merely physical, but emotional, spiritual. To resist was painful, sometimes dangerous. "I chose this place," she said, placing her tiny hands on the table, "because I sensed someone here would understand. Someone who would not exploit." I sat across from her, heart pounding. "You mean me?" Her eyes shimmered as she nodded. "You." Chapter 4. The Choice. For days I wrestled with myself. This was not some casual request. She wasn't human. This wasn't just attraction, it was survival for her. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized I cared for her. Every small kindness, every glowing fruit, every gentle laugh had already wound itself into my life. On the 6th night, I found her sitting once again on the steps, trembling as though chilled. "I cannot bear it much longer," she whispered. "Evan, please." I crouched beside her, placing a hand gently on her shoulder. "Tell me what you need." Her eyes widened, and a tear, silver and luminous, slid down her cheek. Chapter 5: The Bond. Liri led me to her apartment. Inside, the air shimmered faintly, as though infused with energy. She handed me the pendant, which pulsed in time with my heartbeat. "For my kind, bonding is not only of flesh," she said. "It is of spirit. We share breath, memory, essence. If you allow it, I will never forget you, and you will never walk this life alone." I swallowed hard but nodded. "I'll do it." She touched my forehead, and suddenly the room melted away. I was standing in a vast field of stars, weightless. Her voice echoed in my mind, her emotions washing over me. Loneliness, hope, longing, and the fragile joy of being seen. When the vision ended, I was back in her apartment, holding her tiny hands. She smiled through her tears. "You accepted me." Chapter 6. What came after? The next morning, the changes were subtle but real. My pendant glowed faintly when she was near, and sometimes I could sense her thoughts, like faint whispers at the edge of my mind. Neighbors noticed we spent more time together, though no one questioned it. To them, we were simply two odd people who had become close friends. But I knew it was far more. Her mating season eventually passed, and her glow dimmed back to its usual soft shimmer. Yet the bond remained. One evening, weeks later, she leaned against me on the steps between our doors, watching the stars appear one by one. "You surprised me," she said softly. "Most humans would have run. But you stayed." I smiled, slipping the pendant into her small hand. "Guess I'm not most humans." She laughed, the sound bright and musical, and rested her head against my shoulder. Ending. What started as a strange, almost frightening revelation had become something I never expected. A connection deeper than words, stronger than distance, and far beyond the boundaries of species. My tiny alien neighbor had entered her mating season, but what came next was not what I feared. It was what I needed. Life didn't suddenly transform into some fairy tale after that night. Bills still needed paying, the hallway lights still flickered, and the upstairs neighbor still played his music too loud at odd hours. But everything felt different because everything was shared. When I walked home tired after work, Liri would already be waiting by the steps, her pendant glowing faintly as though it had felt my exhaustion before I even arrived. She didn't speak much about it, but I began to notice how she adapted to me, eating at my hours, learning my jokes, asking questions about the little human things I had always taken for granted, like why coffee smelled better than it tasted, or why we watched the same stars night after night even though they never changed. The bond we had formed wasn't only inside her. It lived inside me now, too. I could sense her joy in the smallest moments, like when a moth landed on her hand or when the neighbor's cat brushed against her leg. Her happiness lit something in me I hadn't realized had gone dim. One evening, months after her season had passed, she told me quietly, "The bond doesn't end with the cycle. You are part of me now." I didn't know what to say at first. But when she reached for my hand, I simply held it, understanding that words weren't enough for something like this. And so, my life with Liri became something unexpected, not defined by her biology or by the strangeness of our first bond, but by the choice we continued to make every day to walk this path together. She had entered my life as a mystery, and in staying she gave me a truth. I would never face the stars alone again.